Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Phytech Stone Fruit webinar. My name is Lex Palmer. I am the US Marketing Coordinator here at Phytech, and today I'm with Zachery Stutsman. Zach is based in Lindsay, California, and he is a Customer Success Manager for Phytech, and he's been with Phytech for about a year and a half. So, Zach, thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks, Lex. Thanks for everybody to show up, spend some time today with us. My name is Zach. I handle a lion's share of the stone fruit accounts here at Phytech, so that's why you're listening to me today. I have a history in ag. I started basically from birth. My father's family's grown citrus in California for over 100 years, and we've been doing it here in the Valley for about 65. So that's enough about me. Let's jump into this. You want to hear about Phytech and stone fruit. So okay, so here's the overview. Let's get to the screen where we have the little digital farm. Perfect. Okay, so starting out, we're going to describe the sensors you're going to be dealing with when you get yourself some Phytech. So starting, we're going to go with where it says plant measurement. That's a dendrometer. So the dendrometer is a digital device that measures the shrink and the swell of the trunk of the plant throughout the course of its day. So as it's pumping water in the morning, it's happy. And then as the stomata shut down, then it shrinks down. And there's two measurements we take off of it. One's called MDS. It's short for maximum daily shrinkage. And that shows you how much the plant actually shrunk from the top point of where it was expansion wise. And then growth. So that's a day over day thing to where we measure the change in the overall diameter of the trunk from day to day. We'll get into that in a later slide. Second sensor is the water pressure sensor. We have a lot of different things we run off of that. We can do, it actually plugs into your hose that has the fan jets or the drippers on it. It senses when your water starts running. It tells you when it starts, tells you the pressure throughout the duration of the run, and then it tells you when it stops. So it basically catalogs every irrigation you run on that hose. Third sensor is our soil measurement is what we call it, because it's a volumetric soil probe that has 6 depths on it, goes down 3 feet, so it gives you a reading every 6 inches. It also gives you a reading every 6 inches of temperature, so you can see how your soil is warming up, especially in the springtime. You can tell when those root flushes are coming. You can program your fertigation, your irrigation towards that. We also have my favorite sensor, the fruit sensor, and it works similar to the dendrometer in how it measures the fruit's expansion and contraction during the course of the day and gives you a sense of how that fruit's growing. You could compare it to practices you're doing on your farm to see how that fruit is responding to all these certain practices. You also have, well, an optional one is the weather station, which is a Davis offering. It does temperature, humidity, rain, and wind direction, all sorts of different things. But like I said, that's optional. We also have the loggers. The loggers are what the data from all your sensors migrates to and is actually sent up to the cloud. Through the cloud, it goes through our set of algorithms, and then it kicks you out your plant status. It basically tells you how hydraulically happy your trees are, and it goes over down into your workstation there, where there's an interface on your laptop, and you can use your cell phone. That's for plant monitoring. We also have a hydraulic monitoring suite where we can automate field valves. We can automate your pump. We can measure the depth of your reservoir, how full or empty it is. Same thing with your fertigation tanks. We could put flow meters on those as well to tell you what you're flowing while you're fertigating. We can put before and after pressures on your filter to see how dirty it is if you need to flush, so on and so forth. Just a few of the overall things we can do. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this is basically describing what you're going to get in a kit when you decide to go with Phytech. So you're going to get 3 plant dendrometers off the bat. So that is going to be on 3 consecutive trees that are on the same irrigation line. So the same hose, same run, you're going to get 3 dendrometers on 3 consecutive trees. In there, you're also going to get a water pressure sensor, which tells you when you're on and off and what your pressures were. You're going to get a soil probe, which is the volumetric probe of 6 depth, 3 feet deep, also temperature for that one. Fruit, you're going to get 3 fruit sizers that are going to go on the 3 trees you put your dendrometers on. So those two average 3 samples to give you 1 reading. You're also going to get your data loggers, and then your optional, your flow meters and the temp sensor, which I'll be talking about in relation to stone fruit in a little bit. So next slide. Okay, so how do we select where we're going to put these monitoring sites on your blocks? What we use is NDVI. Now, everybody who has Phytech also has this service. It's on your user. You just click and you get any block that has Phytech service to you get this NDVI. So we use it too on our backend to select sites for where we want to put your kit. So we recommend using multiple sites. Since you get the NDVI, you can choose a more yellow, less vigorous spot. So you can put your one kit there, monitor what we like to call your weakest link to see if that's getting along and being happy and growing your fruit like you want to. Then also maybe monitor the dark green spots, the real high vigor spots, so we can tell that we're not drowning them, overwatering, doing anything detrimental to them, while we're still trying to keep your weak spots alive. So we can monitor both areas and target somewhere in the happy medium. Next one. Okay, so we're going to show you how we monitor trees' health and hydration. Let's see that tree. Okay, so tree wakes up at 6 a.m. and it's happy. It's had all night to recover from the heat of the day. Its stomata are open, it's hydraulically pumping. And as you move through the course of that day, more heat gets imparted into that tree. It's feeling a little more stressed. It starts to close down its stomata in order to retain that moisture. But you're getting to midday, the 6 p.m. mark. That's where you're pretty much going to be as shut down as you're going to be. And that's going to tell you how stressed that tree is for that day. So the color codes we're going to get into here. If you look at the bottom right of the screen, all the way to the right, no stress. Okay, that's actually, that dark green is a little bit of a signal that it's overwatered. Could be getting some negative consequences from a little too much water on those feeder roots. One over to the left is light green. That's where you want to be. That's where you want to sit all the time. Don't want to leave that. That's where your tree is super happy, 100% photosynthetically active. So low stress is the middle one, the yellow. It's sort of more of a warning to let you know, okay, something's going on. Trees are feeling not as happy as they could possibly be. So let's start to change something. And then when you get into orange, that's when you know you're starting to get photosynthetic consequences. And then red is you're really starting to hurt your trees and you're probably going to affect fruit growth, things like that at that point. So, okay, let's go on. Now I'm going to tell you actually how we measure these things, growth in MDS. MDS is the difference between adjacent peaks and valleys. So one peak represents the 6 a.m. portion of your tree when it's as big as it's going to be, as expanded as it's going to be. So then we move over to the bottom, the other little point. Yep. That's where it's basically as tight as it's going to be. It's as stressed as it's going to be. It's as stomata closed as it's going to be. So that's your MDS. That's how much your tree shrank during the course of that time. So the growth is day over day. So an amplitude to an amplitude. So if you're smaller the day previous than you are the next, as in this example, you actually grew. So in this case, it grew 23 microns, but you can go the other way and actually experience negative growth, which you're probably going to be in stress at that point. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, so we irrigate to target maximum fruit growth. That's the name of the game in stone fruit. So let's tell everybody what stone fruit is in this case. So what we're talking about is peaches, plums, nectarines. It's already been a cherry webinar we've done. Might want to check that. It's called How to Win the Cherry Race. So let me tell you before I go into what the specifics of this is. This is what you're going to see on your computer. This is your website user. So all these squares up here that have color on them, the green, the yellow, the orange, the red, those all represent a day. You can see the date above it. So underneath is a representation of the sun, because it's summertime. We're just going to have sunny weather, and it's telling you how hot that day is supposed to be. And actually, if you were on the website itself right now, you could hover your mouse over one of those, like Lex is doing right now, and it would produce a little drop down screen. It would tell you the weather for that day, if it's in the past or in the future, a prediction. If we have a weather prediction for it, it'd tell you temperature, humidity, things like that, what to expect. So the black line that runs beneath that calendar is an average that we make out of the data that we have from all our other similar crops, varieties, plant dates, things that are grown in a similar region. It's just to give you an idea of the track you might want to be on. But it isn't foolproof. It doesn't take into account, heavy crop years and different practices you might be implementing. So let's not take that as, the end all be all to how you need to be performing. Can't get into some sticky situations if some overwatering happens to try to get back on that track. So don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. It's a useful tool, but it's not the end all be all, like I said. And the other one below, it's the same thing for the fruit. Similar planting date, crop, variety, region, all that kind of thing. So MDS and growth, you see up at the top there, in the middle sort of, you can toggle back and forth between maximum daily shrinkage and growth, depending on what parameter you want to see. Same thing with the fruit. The only difference is that the trunk diameter is measured in microns and fruit growth is measured in millimeters. So let's get into the specifics of what this is trying to represent here. So we're looking at an irrigation regimen on a stone fruit block. Looks like this guy's running 24s. He might be subject to the deliveries of his irrigation district. Probably doesn't have a reservoir that he can pull from and just run whatever he wants. So he's at kind of their mercy. But what's going on is there's too many days between irrigation sets. You're starting to see some stress building, especially that first week and into May. You get a couple of yellow days, and it even recovers there later. But then as you get further on, closer to June, those temperatures are getting higher, the ET is increasing. You got more stress building in, you're getting orange days, you're getting red, and then you get an irrigation and it sort of comes out for a day and then it goes right back to yellow, comes back in, and then you're getting increased heat, longer days at the end, and then that stress is really setting in right there. And if you look over time, what really matters is if your fruit's growing. So you start off on the 27th of May with 36.8 fruit diameter. You end up on the 23rd of June with a 39.3. So that only gains you 2.5 millimeters when you're getting all kinds of stress built up into your trees. Only 2.5 millimeters of fruit growth is going to show up here. So let's go to a more optimal example. Okay, see, same situation, still running long sets. We're not doing, daily pulses or anything like that, but same time frame. If you notice, 27 May to 23 June, same weather, similar crop, but we're running those irrigation sets tighter. We're not stretching them out a week plus. We're 4 days in between. We got our MDS curve riding right along that trend line. Most importantly, if you look at the fruit growth, you start off 40.3 on the 27th and end up at almost 50 in the same time period, the same 4-week period we just saw in the last slide. So that gives you an idea of how much fruit growth can be affected just by changing a little bit of your irrigation practices. And that's one of the really cool things you can find out using this data. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so we can also identify fruit development stages to target different cultural practices you're implementing during the course of the year. So if we look at the fruit line there at the bottom, and we start all the way over to the left-hand side, it grows fairly consistently, but it's relatively flat until you get over to about the 22nd of June, where you have a jump of daily growth from a 0.22 millimeters to nearly 0.5 millimeter in a day. You don't see really another jump like that anywhere else. And then from there, it really takes off almost exponentially as you almost a millimeter of growth a day, and sometimes exceeding that. So you can tell that right around that June 23rd mark, that piece of fruit left pit hardening and entered cell expansion. So it's pretty easy to spot these things, and it's really cool to see. Well, just another really neat thing you can use this data for. Okay, let's go to the next one. Finally, remember I told you about those temperature and humidity sensors from the beginning of the presentation. Now, chill is really important in stone fruit, and we have two ways that we can measure it with our ATH sensors. We can do it in chill hours, or we can do it in chill portions, whichever one you choose to run your orchard on. Also, these things, we're working on them being able to do growing degree day accumulations for certain orchard pests, when we get time sprays and other things like that. So very versatile sensor to have. Definitely recommend it for all you stone fruit guys out there. And I think that's it for my spiel. If we go to the end slide, I think we have some time where I could take a few of your questions. But if we don't get to them today, or you stump me, which has been known to happen, you can call my friend Mr. Ziv down there at the bottom. He is our PhD agronomist, and he's probably the brightest dude I've ever worked with. So what stumps me is going to be child's play to him. But if we have some questions, Lex, let's take them.
Great, thanks, Zach. That was an awesome presentation. So
Thank you.
I'm going to open this up. If you guys want to ask some questions in the Q&A, we'll get to answering, and I actually have a few here, so we'll get started with them. The first one is, I irrigate with furrows. How can I have hydraulic data if I don't have hoses in the field to get a pressure reading from?
Great question. If you're irrigating with furrows, what we would do is we would, on our end, set it to a furrow irrigation project, and we would use our soil probe. So we would put that soil probe along with all of our other sensors into your furrow at that location. And once that water comes out of your standpipe, it starts hitting that soil probe, flowing over the soil probe will react and give you a hit like a pressure sensor would normally on your calendar, like I showed you earlier. And it would tell you when the irrigation run started. So as soon as that flowing water hit the probe, and then it would tell you as soon as it stopped. So once that flowing water stopped, once you reached, maximum capacity, and it would tell you the length of the irrigation event. It won't tell you the pressure, obviously. That would probably, the only pressure we could get off of that would be at your pump level. So if we could get your pump level, your pump flow, and then from the hits on the soil probe from your furrows, we could give you a flow rate if we get all the appropriate metadata. So hope that helped.
Awesome. So I have another question here. What is the minimum size the fruit has to be in order for the Phytech fruit sensors to work?
Okay, so if you asked me that question a year ago, I would have told you 25 millimeters, and that's that. Well, that was with our standard fruit sensor. So this year we're prototyping a what we call small fruit sensor that will actually start to read data on your fruit as soon as it reaches a centimeter or 10 millimeters in diameter. And we could put that on, and it would probably take something like cherries or grapes, things like that, all the way to harvest. But what we envision for stone fruit, larger fruits like that, is to apply these early in the season. Once they reach about 35 millimeters, that small fruit sizer is pretty much tapped out. We'd go back out, send another technician out, apply the traditional fruit sizer to take you all the way to harvest from there. So two answers to that: small fruit sizer, a centimeter; large fruit sizer, an inch.
Great. Another question here. So you've showed me how to select sites for your kits. What criteria do you use to determine the total area covered by a single kit?
Okay, so we like to use or to use a fancy word, the granularity at which we want to install these sensors and things. We want to do it per irrigation valve. So if you have a block, let's say that's 20 acres, and you can cut it in half to run 10 acres at a time, it has two valves that operate that 20 acres. We would like to have a kit on both of those valves, both those areas that those two valves control, because we'd like to have that pressure sensor in every single valve in order to give you the proper what we call hydraulic layer data. So pretty much that's it. Just what a valve controls in your field, we would like a kit on that amount of acreage.
Got it. So another question here. You've mentioned pulsing. Is pulsing a recommended irrigation practice by Phytech?
Not every not every branch is set up for pulsing. I mean, if you're set up to do it and you like the way that that whole operation goes down, then yeah, you could totally do it. It's not something we 100% recommend. I mean, I showed slides that give you 24-hour runs and they give you a great smooth fruit curve. They give you a great smooth MDS line. So it's not always 100% recommended that you have to pulse. It's just an option and it works really well for most crops. But no, it's not a hard and fast recommendation that we tell you to pulse.
All right, and another question here, are there different kits for different crop types?
Different crop types, I would say no, they pretty much are universal, but there's different sensors for different types of crop and their physical size. Let's talk about blueberries real quick. They're just a bunch of stems. So how are we going to be able to use a wood screw to screw our heavy dendrometer onto something that small? Also small trees, baby trees that aren't big enough to take the wood screw that we use to mount the dendrometer. We call it an SD or a stem dendrometer. And it just acts like a loose fitting clamp around it. And it still gives you the same MDS curve data line, but it won't give you colors of stress. But once your little trees grow out of that, we can come in and put the regular traditional dendrometers on.
All right. Zach, can you talk more about pump and fertigation monitoring and what Phytech does specifically for stone fruit?
So pump and fertigation monitoring, we can monitor things like the level of fertilizer in your tank if you have it out there at your filter station. We can monitor whether your pump is on or off. We can monitor the pressure before and after your filter stations to tell you how dirty your filters are and if you need to flush them. There's not a whole lot of difference between what we can do for stone fruit growers and what we can do for all growers, really, with monitoring the hydraulic layer. We can produce, based off of your IRG data, we can produce comprehensive lists of every irrigation event that you ran out there that IRG sensed, and we can then use that to put it into a report to send to, say, if you have Primus or global gap audits, we can put those in reports that'll satisfy their needs for things like that. But yeah, it's pretty general what we do on hydraulic monitoring. It's not really that crop specific, but we can cover a lot of stuff with our hydraulic monitoring.
Great. So there's another question here. How do I know which chemical is optimal for growth?
Which chemical is optimal for growth? Now, that's a question probably for your CCA or PCA. Don't want to get into too much of agronomy and fertilizer recommendation here, but usually your late season growth, you're going to need, potassium for your stomatal regulation. You're going to need phosphorus for ATP, cellular energy for expanding those cells. So whichever you would like to prefer to use, like again, ask your agronomist about how to use fertilizers. I don't want to get into to something where I could cause some problems there. No, just enough to be dangerous, I guess.
Fantastic. Well, that concludes our stone fruit webinar. Thank you everybody so much for joining us today and for asking all these wonderful questions. If you have any more questions, there is going to be an email sent out to you shortly with the link to the recording if you want to watch again. And in that email, there'll also be a link to schedule a 30-minute consultation with Zach. So if you want to talk to him more about your stone fruit operation, he would be happy to kind of go through things in more detail with you and really tailor make a plan. So we'll see you guys all at the next webinar. Thank you so much for joining and have a great rest of your day and 4th of July.
Thanks, guys.